He could feel the hill levelling out under his feet, which was a great sensation, like his body was a spacecraft, landing home after a long voyage from inhospitable lands. He generally marked us from the central bar onwards.
Oh, the chief, for sunshine only.
And you've got the port influence, like, because you've got all these things that you like. You get all this kind of Greek stuff and all that.
The day it is passing, in laughter and song. Death he is sowing the whole night long. Death he is sowing.
That's the old Leith Central Station where they built the Scotland.
Ah.
My great-grandfather, he died at Leith Central Station. But apparently, you know, he got drunk and he walked into a tunnel.
When did he walk into a tunnel?
I don't know. I think he was just drunk and he thought it was a shortcut home.
Yeah.
You know, and
What is this obsession with Leith? I mean, it's sort of your territory, like Faulkner has a territory, like some people, writers have territories. Can you remember when it clamped your imagination in the way that it seems to do, and what was it? Is there any way that you want to talk about the sort of core of it that got you?
I think what it is for me was that because I was actually born here but never grew up here. I mean, it's like when I was about I think it was about 18 months. My family moved to the big scheme of Muirhouse, which is kind of just along the coast a bit along, and we always, I mean, when I was growing up, Muirhouse was a great place for kids, but it wasn't any real community. When I got into my teens and I started going to things like the State Cinema in Leith and the football at Easter Road and the band parks just on Leith Walk, I started to get a feel for the place and thought it's actually quite a nice idea to have things like kind of shops and pubs and record shops and football grounds in a place. So it was getting back in touch with almost like something that I felt I'd lost. So it was kind of getting to looking at a sort of alternative life that I might have had if I'd grown up here.
But you found here not only a landscape which is murky and romantic, but you found sort of heroes as well. You're the hard men in the pub, and men who had made some kind of settlement with what life had thrown at them.
I think storyteller was very important to me. I mean, I grew up kind of with all these guys, and sometimes women as well, but mainly the men just telling stories, and then everybody's, you know, you start to get stories yourself. It's still very much a storytelling culture. I mean, when I go out now, listen to some of my friends going on and some of the guys that I kind of hang out with going on, I get all these stories from them. And that whole Celtic oral storytelling tradition feeds into that, and without being overt about it, I mean, that inspired me, not so much to be a writer, I think that kind of came later on, but to actually be a storyteller. I mean, I just made the kind of leap to actually kind of put some of these stories down in you know, words and kind of start fictionalising them and filtering them through my own kind of imaginative process.
There's always fucking something. Scotland, the recipe for disaster. Take a cut of Calvinist repression, sprinkle on some Catholic guilt, add lots of alcohol, cook in a cold, dark, grey oven for 300 odd years, serve with chips on the side. Sometimes Skinner thought he could see it in the faces of the old boys in the Leith pubs, each pint and nip seeming to bring the grim reaper one step closer, fueling delusions of immortality. Oh, but what sweet delusions.
The book is very Dickensian in a number of characters, but you have Danny Skinner and Kibby. You chose these two characters. What were you saying about these two characters?
Well, they seem very kind of different characters, Skinner and Kibby. One seems to be this like kind of hard-drinking, kind of womanising sort of guy with big problems.
Wrecked again last night. Last weekend. Fucking dingo, Skinner.
The other guy is this kind of nice, wee, kind of nerdy mummy's boy. What I wanted to do is to get to that sense of duality and think about how different are they.
Fucking useless phantom bastard, acting like an idiot.
What I wanted to get are the character arcs crossing over and see just where they went to, basically.
Good morning.
It's this whole thing that's duality that's quite big in Scottish literature. I mean, like kind of James Hogg's Confessions and Memoirs of the Justified Sinner, and Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I think these novels particularly were quite a big influence.
Those are the two that came to my mind first of all when I was reading Hogg and Stevenson.
I mean, the original kind of starting point was actually Oscar Wilde's portrait of Dorian Gray, which instead of having the portrait, had another person, basically this object that would be sort of wasted by the depravity of the other party. I'm trying to work out what actually constitutes the self. Are we just the sum of our behaviour? It's this whole thing that novelists have always been fascinated with. Are we just our behaviour, or is it just an environmental thing, or is it just the way we are?
From what you've said, the idea that I'm getting is that you set out to say, I am interested in duality, I'm interested in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I'm interested in Justified Sinner, I'm interested in Dorian Gray, these two in one. Was that the idea, rather than having this man in Leith and that man in Leith?
Leith, to me, it's like a kind of metaphor for Scotland. Scotland was kind of incorporated into the UK to a bigger partner against its will, and Leith was incorporated into Edinburgh in very much the same way. There was a plebiscite that people voted 4-1 against the merger back in 1930, I think it was, but it went ahead nonetheless. And so there's this kind of sense of, again, the duality thing creeps in, are we Scottish and British, are we Leithers, or are we from Edinburgh, just a different part of Edinburgh? So, it just seemed to me to lend itself to setting it here, and obviously because I'm from here, and it is, this kind of like Edinburgh, particularly this part of Edinburgh, is my kind of muse in a lot of ways, but so it just kind of lent itself to looking at it in that way. And I'm not sure whether it was the idea for the book that determined the setting, or the setting kind of determined the idea for the book. It's very difficult to unravel the kind of genesis of these things.
Post-New Year in Edinburgh saw a smoky black city hanging like a pile of bricks in a flimsy net above the heads of its inhabitants. The citizenry would frequently look up in anxiety, waiting for it to drop its load on them. Yet, most borough boys and girls still nipped around briskly. They had processed their hangovers and had yet to break their resolutions, enjoying the wave of optimism a new year brings. One exception to this was a fur-headed Danny Skinner.
See? These trips you go on, Brian. Any rideable females go along?
There's some girls that go.
Like the fucking clappers, I bet.
You
Bet
can.
there's a few rides there, eh?
There's some nice lassies, aye.
Road any? Why so coy? A simple question. Rode any birds at this hiking club of yours?
None of your business.
Looks like I touched the raw nerve there.
This young man is a nice young man. 21, he's still a virgin. He likes toy trains and train sets. He goes hiking. Skinner drinks a lot and hates him irrationally, instantly. You set that up at the beginning very fiercely. So, did you know at the start that you were going to have these two and run them through the novel? Were they the novel?
Yeah, basically they were the first thing that came to me, these two people. I kind of wanted to look at this sort of irrational hatred, which is like a kind of extension of bullying, in a sense, and it's like kind
of... It goes towards sadism.
Yeah. I wanted to get beyond that thing and to push it to its conclusion that, I mean, hating somebody is almost like kind of sort of loving them in a strange way, because it takes so much of your emotional energy and so much of your time, and it's actually kind of, it's kind of quite a bizarrely responsible thing to do. I mean, if you don't like somebody, you should just kind of ignore them and be indifferent to them, but to actively hate them, it kind of implies that you're going to have this kind of relationship with them, and quite a kind of strong, powerful relationship with them.
Skinner's hatred turns into something else, which I want to talk about later, which is to do with the curse and the demonic. But it begins in just hating somebody who leads that sort of life and is that sort of nice young man. Can you just develop that a bit? Because it starts being funny and then it becomes sadistic.
Skinner feels that basically he's a very kind of intelligent guy, and he's going places and all that. And he's got the goods, but he's hampered by this kind of this what he sees as this kind of curse of alcoholism, of that kind of weakness, of that kind of obsessive compulsive weakness. And he resents Kibby for being free from that, and he sees Kibby as not being as intelligent or as gifted as him. It's almost like he's got this kind of disability in a way that is going to hamper him, whereas Kibby doesn't have this disability, but isn't as kind of isn't as gifted, isn't as intelligent, isn't as kind of smart and sassy as he is, so he believes. And that's where, you know, I think that's where his resentment comes from.
Sometimes he thought about the father he never met, liked the idea of him being somewhere warm, perhaps in what they call the New World. In his mind's eye, he could see a healthy and tanned man, perhaps with salt and pepper hair and a bronze-limbed family, youthful and blonde, and he would be accepted into their midst in an act of reconciliation that would make sense of his life.
The wisest in our midst have long known that the simplest of questions are often the most loaded.
With every student of the culinary arts who comes into my orbit, I endeavour to begin our relationship by asking the question, who is
The master chef. He's just a fucking cook. There's so many of those cunts are too big for their boots.
And this fucking guide to sexy food.
Not to remedy
The whole thing's ridiculous.
but attend to the far more wondrous task of uplifting the soul.
This man, this young man, 24-year-old man, Skinner, he wants to know who his father is, so he sets out on a quest. It becomes the obsession, who was his father? That's a fascinating story anyway. What drew you to that on top of the other one?
To me, there had to be something that was kind of fueling his anger and his alcoholism. I mean, it had to be something about, and it had to be something to do with his identity, with him trying to find out, you know, what part of him is missing. You know, what kind of, what was his father like? What kind of data is he missing in his life? What kind of source data is he missing? You know, so he wants to know, you know, that basically, you know, do I have to kind of just go to AA and do the 12-step thing and sort of never touch another drop again? You know, or can, you know, is it just that I'm bitter and angry about my circumstances and depressed about them, and that's making me drink? I can sort of circumvent that and just have a normal kind of drinking sort of life, social life.
In Junction Street, prams and pushchairs steered by robotic Prozac-stunned mothers threaten to sever Skinner's tendons. He can feel the eyes of the hard men from the bookies, bars and bus stops burrowing into him. The pint of golden nectar, the seat still warm and moulded for your arse cheeks. The world is a better place for Danny Skinner with a pint or seven inside him. The sharp edges have gone. Leith is no longer stuffed with cruel, brutish psychopaths who hate him. They have vanished, replaced by a convivial community of jaunty, salt-of-the-earth types.
He's at that age where he's still enjoying the irresponsible kind of carousing of youth.
And he's still strong enough to take it.
Yeah, and he's still got the constitution that he can take it. So he kind of, he wants to, but he doesn't want to at the same time. You know, he knows he'll have to at some point, but he's kind of postponing this kind of thing. And I think the catalyst for him doing that is when his fiancée leaves him, when he starts to realise that it's, you know, this is actually having ramifications on his life as it is now. that propels them into this quest.
It's over, Danny.
What? Please, darling. Please, Kay. I can work this out.
We've talked about Skinner and Kibbe, and we've talked about the masculine culture. There's some very strong women in this book, not only strong, interesting women. Are they bringing anything that we could put in a generalisation, or is a generalisation a waste of time?
It's something that I feel that I've been taking more interest in, is writing about women, and I haven't traditionally been concerned with that. I wanted to know more about these characters there, and I actually kind of, for space, because it was Skinner and Kibbe's story, I cut out a lot of the stuff that was, was about the female characters in it. I feel a bit thwarted that I've not been able to spend more time with these characters.
You're an alcoholic. And guess what? You love it.
The day it is passing in laughter and song. Aye, right. What am I? A social drinker? Aye. But more than that, a binge drinker. For sure. When I'm not drinking socially or thinking about drinking. A fucking alcoholic! Aye! That's the one! I'm an alky! I don't do sober so much anymore! I've been pushed out between the two big ones! Being drunk! I've been hungover! Being hungover isn't being sober! Being hungover's hell! If I can fight my old man, I'll fucking shit! Then I can see if he was a drunk! If that was his legacy! Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!
Death he is sowing the whole night long. Death he is sowing.
Is there any sense of the sort of fatherlessness, looking for someone to put you right, set you on the path, be a strong father?
I think, yeah, I think for that character he probably is looking for a kind of, a sort of almost like a stronger, older self to kind of say to him, like, screw the nut, or, or carry on, or whatever, he's looking for, it's just a phase you're going through, carry on, have a great time, you're still young, or screw the nut, behave yourself,
One of the factors in a lot of your novels is to do with people taking drugs. But interestingly enough, and you've mentioned it already in that answer, Skinner, the power in the book, really, the demon, is driven by the drink. But you're in the drink culture. Why did you want to concentrate on that?
I think, again, it's a very kind of culture, it's a very Scottish thing. And in literature as well, if you go right back to Robert Burns and Tam O'Shanter, you've got this whole idea of the demon drink. I don't even think it's so much kind of drink itself or drugs in itself. It's that urge to basically to keep going. I think that the big kind of interface now, to me, that's the most kind of dangerous thing in a way, is the interface between drink and cocaine, because people will drink loads and then they'll have a couple of lines, instead of just passing out or going to bed, they'll have a couple of lines of cocaine, then they'll be up ready to do it again. And I think there's a reason why alcohol makes you tired, and I think that's because it actually tells you, it's actually time to go to your bed, and it makes you slur your words so that people can't hear what you're saying, or because they're drunk as well. And I think that's the sort of the destructive interface now is that kind of relationship between alcohol and cocaine.
But what's the drive to drink among these people in your book? Let's talk about the novel now, and let's leave the anthropology out of it. What's driving these young men to meet, be together, drink too much together, find their friendship moulded almost through drink and tested through drink?
There's this cultural expectation, that is kind of what you do. Basically, it's the weight of history. I mean, it is also going back to lots of factors, like people traditionally working in hard industries that they don't do now, and just needing that kind of respite. And as you said yourself, that idea that people testing the limits and not, just seeing how much they can take, what they can do, how far they can go on. There's this whole idea in any drug culture, and you see it in alcohol, that you're either kind of celebrating or you're hiding, And I think that it's like it's easy to celebrate the kind of the good things in life and just to celebrate being alive and all that. But there comes a point when you can see people that when things aren't going their way in life, that this kind of celebration can flip over into a kind of hiding thing, and I think it happens readily without you being that aware of it at times.
But it's to do with great friendship as well, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
This is the start. This is what you're friends with the people you drink with. You never betray them. You never let them down.
Yeah.
This is your gang, your lot in both senses of the word.
I think there's also that thing about kind of physical boundaries between men. I mean, for like working class heterosexual men, it's very difficult for them to actually touch each other unless they're pissed. Basically, you see the physical distance. We go in a pub and I see some friends, like, we're all starting, how you doing? All right, aye, not bad, and then it's like, so it's like, there's almost this, it gives you permission to step outside of what the expectation of you is.
Then what happens is something remarkable. In a sort of incandescent moment, Skinner puts a curse on Kibby.
A powerful, speculative fantasy gnaws at Skinner. Wouldn't it be fantastic if Kibby could take his hangovers and come-downs for him? If he, Danny Skinner, were to indulge in the pleasures of life in the most reckless way, and fresh-faced, clean-cut mummy's boy wanker Kibby could pay the price.
How fantastic would that be? Kibby. God, how I loathe him. How I fucking well hate and detest that puerile little fart. I hate him. Hate. 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 Fucking hate. 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 That Kibby! Let him get fucked up!
He puts a curse on Kibby, and then what?
Well, he puts a curse on Kibby, and what basically happens is that Kibby takes on all his hangovers and come-downs and basically all his pain. He can behave in the most totally reckless way and irresponsible way. He can sit up drinking all night for weeks, or go off on sort of big binges and sort of drink and drug binges, and Kibby will take. He'll take the rap for it. He'll have the hangovers. He'll have the come down. He just gets this massive infusion of Skinner's toxins in the night, and he has to sort of deal with with processing and ingesting all these toxins that Skinner's consumed. In the process, that wrecks his health while Skinner thrives.
So if you're lonely, you know I'm here waiting for you. I'm just a crosshair. I'm just a shot away from you. And if you leave here, you leave.
I've put a hex on him. I did this because I object to his mediocrity, his blandness, and how he will advance beyond me purely because he doesn't have my demons holding him back. Oh! Kibby!
It seems like a kind of dream solution, a dream ticket for him, but it's not. And the reason it's not is basically, his moral conscience kicks in. That, what he's actually doing is destroying this guy, and he doesn't really want to do that.
I want to go into that relationship between Skinner and Kibby. Skinner burns himself with a cigarette. Kibby gets the wound, Skinner gets anally raped, Kibby gets the wound, and on it goes. Now, I found this very tough to read after a while, but it's very like a lot of the things you do in your novels throughout. You won't let go. It's the road to excess, isn't it? I mean, you drive through and through.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where it comes from, that kind of, but I sort of, when I look back at it now, and when you kind of, when you list all these things that happens to them, I think maybe it is a bit excessive to make that point, that he does get this thing going, but I try and get into the zone when I'm writing fiction that this kind of zone of extremis. And I think that it needs that kind of build-up for me. I have to run at it. I think as a writer, I'm trying to get to the point of making sure that I actually resolve what I'm setting up. And the more extreme the setup, the more acute the actual resolution has to be. So in a way, it's kind of pushing myself to get to that finishing line and to sort of come over the finishing line as strongly as I possibly can.
You find energy in that excess, you as a writer, because the writing rips through.
I tend to finish stuff pretty quickly. I kind of try to get as right as I can, really, with the first draft, and to get off in that almost sort of kind of transcendental energy, to me, it's just an important thing that you have to go with it. And it does lead you into places that sometimes you would rather not be in, you know, and especially when you look back, you think, my God, you know, where is all this stuff coming from? What am I thinking of here?
This curse, which works, there are people who can put a fix on other people. I'm not talking about driving them to... I am talking about driving them to destruction, though, or not to destruction. I don't want to meet that person because they don't wish me well.
There's a mystical side of the world that we can't explain, and we don't know anything about it, you know. And we've come up with all these reasons to sort of to attempt to sort of justify it, but we're not. But the basic kind of fundamentals we don't really know. That's it. I mean, I remember I was working in London in this office, and there was a lot of guys from Africa who were working there, and there was this guy who was a kind of suit and tie accountant, but he was one of the top kind of medicine men in this village. I had a bit of a falling out with this guy, and as soon as this, you know, I'm kind of very kind of sort of rationalist sort of kind of person, and as soon as this guy told me he was a medicine man, you know, I sort of took him to the pub, bought him a drink, and sort of was anxious to patch things up. It's just covering all bases, but I was relieved when I'd done this and we were friends, and you know, whichever curse was lifted.
In the new novel, there's a hovering idea of, well, there's an idea of the devil very strongly there, isn't there? I mean, God doesn't have much of a voice, but there's an idea of the devil there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't consciously think of the devil as a kind of as an entity, as a being. It's this idea of the devil not existing as an entity, but existing as a kind of as a darker side of humanity.
We know that our bodies are temples of God's Son and are to be clean so that the Holy Ghost may dwell within us. Masturbation is a sinful habit. Be assured that you can be cured of your difficulty.
Fucking funny say.
A guide to self-control. 1. Never touch intimate parts of your body except during normal toileting processes.
If you associate with other persons who share this problem, you must break off the friendship. Keep a positive mental attitude. Satan never gives up, and neither should you. You can win this fight.
Later that night, exiting from his latest hostelry, sodden with drink, Skinner looked up, contemplating the luminous hollow sky. The tendrils of cloud provided so rich a Gothic background. Skinner fancied all type of diabolical forces could be concealed within its folds.
This book ends, you mentioned Oscar Wilde and Dorian Gray earlier, ends very like a picture of Dorian Gray. And so in that sense, you're telling a moral story.
I sweated about the end, really, because I thought that it was a difficult character to kill off, really, because he's just come to the end of this journey and he's learned from it, and you feel that he kind of deserves a reward, but he has also transgressed in such a way that you feel that he doesn't, in a sense. So I kind of had to get some kind of denouement out of it, and it just made sense that he wouldn't survive.
Did the sort of symmetry of the structure mean that had to happen despite your own sympathy?
I think, yeah. I mean, I kind of I had sympathy for both of them,
yeah.
And I thought that. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a happy ending, but it was probably about the happiest I could come up with, without making them kind of waltz off into the sunset as buddies together, which was
rather splattered against a wall, ending up as raw meat.
Surely to fuck, no. Kibby. The dirty wee cunt is fighting back.
Who are you, Skinner? What do you fucking want with me? Who the fuck are you, Skinner? I'll tear your fucking face off, Skinner!
Now Kibby isn't the keen, sooky, irritating little arse-lick of old. He's caustic and bitter and vindictive and obsessed and just like me. No. Fuck you, Kibby.
Irvine Welsh is, to a degree, a victim of his own early success. His first published works, The Acid House and Trainspotting, are still his most well-known, although with works like Porno, Filth, Ecstasy and Glue, he's been exceptionally prolific ever since.
Doesn't it make you proud to be Scottish?
It's shite being Scottish! We're the lowest of the low! The scum of the fucking earth! The most wretched, miserable, servile, pathetic trash that was ever shot into civilization! Some people hate the English, I don't. They're just wankers. We, on the other hand, are colonised by wankers. Can't even find a decent culture to be colonised by.
Yeah, I wrote Trainspotting just, where was my office? It was just there, looking,
The middle one?
Yeah, the middle one, looking down on the Dockers Club. Yeah.
People have written quite a lot about Trainspotting, well, a lot about Trainspotting, and we know how massively successful it was and is, and deservedly so. Did you think that when you were writing about that, you were taking on a world that hadn't been addressed?
I kind of felt that drugs and all that kind of heroin had been addressed. And I wanted to write something which was much more, in a sense, much more kind of poetic, just about people who are kind of innocents, and they're stumbling into this culture and they don't really know anything about it. And to some extent, it kind of mirrored my own experience, because when I was growing up, I knew nothing at all about drugs. I mean, basically, alcohol was a drug. So I mean, it's like kind of the idea that you know, that you would take any other drugs or any other drugs were available was bizarre. You know, 'cause it's like when I was going to school, parents, teachers, and all that, they would say, you know, don't take drugs, just don't take. But there was no drugs to take. You know, there were just none available in Muirhouse. You might have had some people in town who smoked a bit of dope. I remember that I was told so much that don't smoke cannabis, it'll kill you. Don't smoke dope. This is for people who've never seen, by people who've never seen dope ever. You know. I remember I was like, when I was at a party and somebody gave me a joint to smoke, I was like a bag of nerves. You know, I was like, I'm going to die now. I'm going to end up in intensive care or something. And then I realised, well, you know, it's actually just makes me feel a bit tired and silly. And I never really got on with it. And the next thing it was with speed, you know, don't take any of that amphetamine, you know, it's going to kill you. But all it did was give me a bit more energy so I could jump up and go to music and concerts and jump around and all that, you know. And when heroin came along, you know, it was like kind of don't take heroin, you know, it'll kill you. But that time you're going, oh, God, you know, nonsense.
People think it's all about misery and desperation and death and all that shite, which is not to be ignored.
Fuck off! That's cunt!
But what they forget is the pleasure of it.
Oh, Dave, wait.
Otherwise, we wouldn't do it.
Pure as the driven snow of that shit, then.
After all, we're not fucking stupid. Or at least we're not that fucking stupid.
I decided that I was going to write a book about a certain point in Edinburgh, a culture that was neglected, and people were kind of dropping like flies, basically, in Muirhouse, and the authorities were still saying that AIDS is a kind of gay disease. It's nothing to do with intravenous injecting. They were shutting down the needle exchanges, and so people were kind of banging up in these big syringes and just sharing all this bad blood around. And if I had continued to take heroin, I would probably have been in exactly that kind of scene. You know, so I think, you know, it was really trying to work out to my own satisfaction kind of what's happened to places like, you know, the place that I grew up in. What's happened to these big estates that have had this mass unemployment in the 80s, and they've had the sale of council houses in the higher amenity parts of town, which means that, you know, people feel trapped. They can't get transferred into different parts of the town. So what becomes just a kind of working class part of town starts becoming ghettoised as a result of all these things. And you have this kind of influx of cheap Pakistani heroin. And you just have that traditional youth culture of excess as well. So it's trying to reconcile all these elements.
Because in Transporting, you're talking about poverty, unemployment, certain forms of prejudice. One way to read it is very much as a book about the power of the class system in a so-called increasingly classless society.
There's just very overt kind of expectations of social classes here, and it's still very strong. You know, and I think as long as I'm not kind of getting on a soapbox or anything like that, but in my opinion, as long as you have institutions like the monarchy, the House of Lords, and all that kind of stuff, it's always going to be strong, because it kind of it institutionalises this idea of a kind of structural inequality. That's not a dig at you, actually.
This programme's about you. I think a defence of the House of Lords and the Dockers Club here in Leith will be maybe a debate worth listening to, Irvine, but maybe another time.
Good luck, Spud.
Cheers, Cowboy.
Now, remember,
What?
if they think you're no trying, you're in trouble, right? First hint of that and they'll be onto the DHSS. This cunt is no trying, and your gyro's fucking finished, right?
Right.
But then again, try too hard.
You might get the fucking job.
Exactly.
Nightmare.
It's a tightrope, Spud. It's a fucking tightrope.
See, I just get pure shy with the interviewer cats. Like, I get all nervous and I can't answer any of the questions. Like, I'm a footballer and I get nerves on a big occasion, man.
Try some of this, Spud.
Yeah, a little dab of speed is just a ticket, man.
No, I went to Craig Newton. I just put down to the Royal...